Should all your money be all my money? Welcome to this week's Ask Jay. I'm Jayson J Mair, your relationship coach, answering your relationship questions that you've sent in. Thank you for joining us. Let's get into it. This week's question is from Miss Bougette. I might say Miss B, we'll put you down as. Thank you for emailing us in. And the question is, we have been together for 3 years and we haven't really started a joint bank account yet. I'm not that keen on it, though my fiance keeps suggesting it. Should we really combine our accounts into one account? I'm just unsure. Please help me as I'm scared to do this. Thanks for emailing. And you know what? Just before I started to set up for this video, I'd actually seen a news story where it must be in the news right now about, is it good to have joint bank accounts or not? So it's a question a lot of people get asked. I get it a lot in sessions as well. And I'll tell you now, one of the biggest breakdowns in relationships, apart from trust, is finances, your money. So this is not just a easy little question, a little issue. It can turn into one of the biggest issues when it comes to struggles with relationships. The second biggest thing is finances. I actually would put it up there with trust, because with trust, if you're not trusting that the person's doing the right thing or not, it could come down to the finances. And if you separate finances, it gets nasty. So without further ado, as you know, we break it down into 3 parts, 3 tips. First one is the pros of having a joint bank account. Why is it a good idea? Well, firstly, as I like to do with all sessions, is I'd like to get you on the same page. So if the money is all going into the same account, you're on the same page. You know what's going on. You're transparent. You can see it all. Fantastic. Well, not always. I'll get to why I say it's not fantastic later down the track. Less chances of secrets and surprises popping up. It's more efficient. A lot of people have said, it's more efficient to have one account. So you have less fees and it's all there, and, your dual signatures and dual cards and everything else. And another thing that did come up, a good close friend of ours we lost last year, was on holidays. His partner and him had a joint bank account and discovered that having a joint bank account was a little easier on, sorting out the finances and that when he passed than it would have been if they had separate bank accounts. So, and I'm not a financial advisor, so, speak to your banking institution about that. But from what I've been told and what I've heard recently, and that having one account, if something were to happen to the other, it just makes it just a little tad easier to sort out the finances and access that and get through that. Now, the cons, why you shouldn't have a joint bank account. Here we go. Debt. You get with someone, you meet them, they look fantastic, they're great, they make you feel happy and everything else, and they have a lot of debt. Tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. You, on the other hand, might be a person who's been able to save a lot of money and have done really well and really don't want to take on that debt. And that is the reason why tip number 3 is very crucial to it, and I'll get to that at the moment. Separate accounts also retain the feeling of independence. If you've got your own bank account, you go to work, however you go to work Monday to Friday or whatever, you earn all the money, it goes into your account. It's your money, it's your earnings to do as you please. Yes, you need to pay bills and everything else, and we'll get to that at the moment, but you still have your independence. And one of the biggest things I like to say when it comes to relationships is when a relationship falters is when 2 becomes 1. Everyone says that's romantic, but I tell you now, that's what happens. So you lose your independence. You forget to be who you used to be. And having your account and your money going in with someone else's, the amount of times I've had sessions where someone has, the arguments got that, they can't even spend their own money because the other person has control over it. They have a controlling partner who takes control of it and they only get like pocket money. even though they've worked and earned more than the other person, they get a little bit of pocket money to spend. It gets very nasty. And also different levels of income. You know, you might earn, I don't know, $70, $100, $200,000 a year maybe. Who knows? Your partner might only earn 50, 30, 40, 50,000 a year. And then it goes into a joint bank account, and then you find that the person who's earning less is spending more, or you're splitting it down the middle. And some people will have a sense of regret or really feel uncomfortable that, you know, the other person is taking advantage of that and using more of the money than that. Look, everyone, when you get together, you work as a team and you're a pair, and it's built as your life together. But at the same time, people can take advantage of that as well. So just keep that in mind. And like the pros with the cons, there is also a dark side. Don't like to think of this, but when in our nation alone, and even in a lot of other countries, it's in over 50% of marriages are ending in divorce these days, and it's actually rising. When it comes to separation and divorce, finances, not only is the financial issues the cause of it, it gets worse when it comes to separations. Now, we don't want to look that way, but I tell you now, when it happens and lawyers are brought in and everything else, no one wins. No one gets any of that money because it all goes to the lawyers. And for what? You know what? You just got to be careful. So there's your pros and cons. Tip number 3 is have the conversation. Yes, communication's a big thing in relationships, especially when it comes to your finances. Now, obviously, you don't want to have it on the first date and go, right, well, if this works out, what are we going to do about finances? But if you are starting to talk about moving in together, living together, getting married, or getting serious where, you know, things are getting really heated, you need to sit down and have this conversation as early into that piece of the next step of the relationship as possible. Because I tell you now, you might go, it's okay now, but what's okay now is going to be one of the biggest and main factors that are going to ruin the relationship down the track. I see it way too often. I like to be the optimist, but when you see something happening so much, so often, I like to be also the pessimist and actually give you the heads up. If you are proactive and if you have this conversation early and get this sorted, because it is a life lesson that needs to be learned. You need to be able to learn how to handle money. You need to learn how to have this conversation and get it sorted. Because once it's sorted, once it's all out in the open and sorted out, you can move forward. Now, when you have the conversation, you need to understand, is it going to work for both? If one's keen as hell for it and the other one is not, don't do it. And I'll tell you why. The reason being is the person who doesn't want to do it, they'll go into it half-heartedly and they are going to resent it. They are going to regret it. They're going to resent it, and it is going to just niggle at them so much, and it will start to cause arguments very earlier on. You know, okay, so just keep that in mind. You have to have the question about if someone has a lot of debt and someone has no debt, what's going to happen? Is that other person going to pay it? Are they going to be joined together and they take it on? Because I see a lot of couples where one doesn't have debt, the other one does. That one pays it off, and then when they separate, that person has nothing left. They've used all the money to help that other person. We've got to think logically when it comes to relationships and money. We just have to. We have to start to think better. You know, there's too much credit availability. There's too much debt in this world that if we actually save that money instead of getting on credit and debt and everything else, we'd be such a richer environment, richer planet, and so forth. And this is where we've got to learn. And this is what I was saying before. It's a life lesson to be able to handle money well. One of the suggestions I also talk about, I'd like to mention, is if you're going to have a joint account, ask, are you going to have a joint account where both accounts are just into one? Or you're going to have a joint account that is for partly finances? Meaning, you have a joint account, you keep your own accounts, you open up a third account where you put money in. Now, this can go towards, say, rents, bills, mortgage, holiday, marriage, whatever it is that you're planning on doing, you put a percentage of that into that account and you keep the rest yourself. And this way, you're both working together, you're both, putting in and can see what's happening, but you still have your independence to still have, you might want to go and buy your partner, organize a trip away. Now, this is what I was saying before about transparency. Some transparencies, you want to keep a little secrecy and only good secrecy. Meaning, you want to organize a weekend away for your partner without them knowing, you can do it because you can take it out of your account, not the joint account, and do that. You want to buy them some flowers or something. If you've got a controlling partner who wants to be control everything and they ring you 5 minutes after you've gone and spent something on some flowers and they go, what's this bill for $25 coming out of the account 15 minutes ago? What's going on? It ruins that. So you just gotta have this conversation, get it out of the way, really sort it out. If it comes to the bills and that, you might even have to come to the agreement if you're not going to have a joint account, have it where, one person has a couple of the bills in their name and the other person has a couple of bills in their name. So, you might have the rent and water in the husband's name and the electricity and gas in the wife's name. And then each month we do it ourselves. A bill comes in, I just send a copy of the bill to my partner and just say, this is your half. She puts it into the account that I've got and I pay it before it's due. It's quite simple. It works really well. It was something I learned quite a few years ago. And I tell you now, as I said, it's a life lesson to be able to work and understand and your finances and get that out of the way. When I say relationships have the two biggest issues are trust and finances, you need to be proactive. You need to have this conversation. So, Miss B, hopefully it's helped you and anyone who else who's thought about, asking this question. I've had a couple of people sort of titter around that sort of stuff. You need to have the conversations and get it sorted. So as I said, think of why it's a good idea. Those tips I gave you, why it's not a good idea, and then have the conversation of how you can approach it. Do you have a joint account? Do you have a partly joint account? Do you just split the bills in each other's names so it's not all in one, not controlled all by one? But just think and take into consideration that when you meet someone, there is a high probability in this day and age of debt. In the news story I saw before I actually started recording this, they were talking about joint bank accounts, and one of the things they mentioned is what I wasn't surprised about is a lot of the younger generation are not doing joint accounts anymore because of all the issues. They are actually learning from past mistakes of the past generations where they've seen their parents split up. They've seen loved ones, fall apart due to relationship and financial stress and so forth. What we can do as we're moving forward is we can think proactively, we can learn from the mistakes, and we don't have to do what everyone else used to do. The norm of the last 20, 30, 40 years is not the norm of today. Hopefully that has made things a lot easier for you, Miss B, and anyone else who's watching today. Thank you very much for the question. It was a great question, and I hope it helps a lot of people. If you're watching this and you have a way to approach it, by all means, put a tip down below so Miss B and anyone else who is thinking about what to do about it can see your answer and learn from it, because that's what we're doing here. Each week, I'm trying to give you tips that make things a little bit easier so you're proactive in what you do with your relationships and moving forward. What used to work 20, 30 years ago is not working today, and people are learning from it, and that's great. Let's stop doing what does Einstein say? He says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's insane. It's ridiculous. So anyway, thank you very much for watching wherever you are. As always, if you've got any questions, send it in to Jay, J-A-Y, @jasonmair.com. And we'll answer it next week. We'll see you the same bat time, same bat station next week for another episode of Ask Jay. Again, thank you for watching wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night.